Ala, she talked about tier 1 operator in APAC. Network as a service gave it away at the top. Yes, so Amdocs is helping us in our journey towards migrating to network as a service. So what is network as a service? Let's see. So we all know about this integration spaghetti, where we started with one technology and we added a second technology, and then even the NFV came along, and what it did is just helped us in adding more spaghetti lines to manage this particular new technology. It was supposed to make it easier because we were going to build it on top of white boxes. It's going to be cheaper and so on, but in the end, if you're talking about how we're going to manage it, we're just adding more and more spaghetti line, and the more we add spaghetti line, the harder it is for us to migrate or to help in delivering anything fast. So Telstra has actually devised a new architecture. This is part of our Network Evolution 2020, and where we've decided that instead of keeping the spaghetti mess, we're actually making our OSS and IT systems lighter. So we are removing all of the knowledge of the resource level information. We're providing all of that into the domains only. So I can have my mobile access domain, my unified communications domain, my managed services security domains, and so on. And any service provider can create their domains as they want. It could be regional domains, things like that. But what it is that each of these domains are actually going to be exposing a network service, all right? Or more than one, hopefully. And what it is that each of these services are going to be reusable services. So think about today, think about firewall, okay? So today, if I look, I was just on Telstra Internet, and I went on the enterprise catalog, and I said, okay, so how many, when could I buy a firewall? Where's a firewall? And I had at least 6 products, 6 enterprise products that was using firewall. What that means is that every one of my product manager created a whole stack of, say, internet security was one of them that uses a firewall. And they created, for my firewall, for my internet security, they handpicked a firewall supplier, and they work with that alongside everything else that is required for that internet security. Now, I also have a managed firewall service, and I also have an intrusion security protection service, and each one of those have their own firewall suppliers. So that's pretty inefficient. So what if I was to expose firewall as a service, right? And that firewall as a service can be reused into multiple products that we're selling back to the customers, right? So this is what I am talking about. I am talking about creating smaller services that are reusable services that are being exposed. And in fact, what am I building is as an operator, I'm actually building a catalog, just like you'd go to the AWS catalog. I'm actually building a catalog of services that can be reused by products or by another domain requiring, for example, a transport service or something else. So this is really what we are doing. And what we've done is to build a very light platform called Network as a Service platform that is basically an API gateway. So it knows where all of those different services live, which domain manage these services that are being exposed. And it has a master service catalog and talks just TM Forum APIs, as I was mentioning earlier today. And so today, instead of having every product catalog here, and I have one for retail, and I have another product catalog for enterprise, another product catalog for wholesales, and they all speak different languages, and they all have to adapt to every systems that are down here that all speak their same or They all have their own way of speaking. So they all have their own APIs. And why? Well, because every supplier you talk to, they'll say, I don't like these TM Forum APIs, you know, we have better APIs. Yeah, that's nice, but that means that I need to have a system integrator or somebody else to adapt to your better APIs, right? And then one supplier, for sending a configuration request, one supplier would say, well, you need to send me 3 calls, and that will do the activation. Another supplier, oh, you need to send me these 7 different API calls to do the same thing. But that's just the way their APIs work. And so in the end, well, if I have to do this translation, you know how to handle those requests. Why don't you do the translation? And you put in those APIs, and you figure out how to do it internally. And so this is why I participated to the standards and trying to, you know, alert you of these things that we actually need in the industry. So we've started our platform. Our NaaS platform is live. These are some of our services that have started appearing on our NaaS platform. Again, today it's for internal use. This is our own, so our IT system will come in and order these, and one domain can order another domain all through our NaaS platform. This is for our internal use, but guess what? You know, at some point when we're happy and it's all working good and everything is good, I will open this to my customers, right? And then I become in the chain, and then it will be a lot easier for me to build new products. So today, I showed this example here where we open up one of these servers, and in here I have the contract that explains basically what sort of calls you can do, what are the attributes you'll need to send me, and things like that. And you can also open up the calls, so the API, and you can test the APIs. So this is how we're now moving into from a Telstra perspective. So we are now having our own network service that we're advertising. And so if you think about it, because I'm only advertising network services through Open's API, I can extend this to partners as well, right? So if I work with another third party for doing, I don't know, any types of IoT services, then as long as they speak the same language in those TM Forum APIs, I don't need to know how to configure that. I just need to know how to order it, and it's all this network service, and I don't need to know about their resource level. It's a lot easier to plug them in and add them into my list of network service directory, and again, benefiting my enterprise customers, you know, further down the line when I'm moving in that direction. So this is quite important to us. We believe that any service provider can build that same architecture and benefit from the same thing. I mean, we've built our own API gateway, as I said earlier this morning, but you can pick your own API gateway if you want. It doesn't have to be. And actually, right now, actually an hour earlier, there was a presentation, there's a webinar on the TM Forum website where my boss was talking about how they built the NaaS API platform. So anyone can listen to that webinar. So these are the type of things that we need as an operator. These are the type of operation. We need to be able to order it. So we need to ask whether you can service this particular request and whether the location is working and da, da, da. Then we need to be able to take an order and activate for that request. We also need to make sure that if it is a usage base, that we can collect the information and that we can resolve any issue. So these are the types of APIs that we're using, which I said it is TM Forum APIs, and we've put them together under the TMF 909, and as well with the service catalog. This, to me, the service catalog is actually the most important one because we are talking about intent, and we are talking how to enable automation. And to enable automation is all about exposing your capabilities. Because the more you can expose, the most other systems in this industry collectively the more you will be able to collect that information and do something with it to enable more automation, right? So from my network domain, if I'm saying for one particular network service, let's say my firewall is a service, right? So my firewall, what are the service characteristics? Actually, I had this example as a DSL. So a service type for O2A, or from an O2A perspective, I need to have this service characteristic called service type. Then I'll also need it if I want to do qualification. I'll also need it for SLA and so on. Service address, I'll need it for both. But the required minimum speed, I only need to send that in my O2A request. The service qualification, for example, when I do the API call on the service qualification, I don't need to know the minimum required speed. But what I need to know is the available speed when I'm saying, can I deliver that service? So I need to send a call and say, okay, what's the available speed? And I receive a request back that tells me what it is, and hence, then I can send my O2A saying, please activate it at that speed because I know you've returned it back to me and you told me what my speed was. And so some of these things that were basically you're advertising, and the more you advertise stuff, then the more you can automate. And so we want to be able to expand and add things such as, can you do an activation test? And doing an activation test is actually quite important because that means that once it's finished doing the activation, then I can do an automated test that then before I go back to my customer, I say, oh, I've already done the test, right? And with newer technology, with VNF, being able to instantiate a probe just to do that test and then turn it down, I mean, these things are, you can do this these days, right? But you're doing it, chaining it, basically, as you're doing these things. And again, I didn't need to ask for a particular network engineer and from an O2A side, or another person talking to another guy from an assurance side and so on. We're asking our network guys to actually expose everything that is available about that network service, and then we can create anything from that. So if I'm moving now more towards thinking about the intent, but if I take my head from an intent perspective and I say, okay, from a closed loop assurance side, again, the customer has to be in the front, in the center of why we're doing this. But what are the things is I need to declare what I can do or what I need, and then you have to detect and identify a problem. You diagnose it and figure out the cause for it, decide what you're going to do about it, and then act on it, right? Execute whatever you need to do. And the interesting about it is that when again I'm asking my network engineer, I said, you guys, you got to start thinking about the whole thing, not only what it takes for activation, but now you have to start thinking about the implications around what it is that you need to expose such that you can get a CLA to happen. And you need to think about what does it need to declare about the service from a management perspective. So, you need to answer these things. How would it enable the lifecycle management of your service, right? What are all the things that you need to expose such that the management is going to be easier from a management which is from cradle to grave? Then how would it allow to control the service behavior? Again, what are the type of things that you need to expose such that a third party or something is monitoring those KPIs and then decide, oh, something happened and I need to do something about it, and what are the action that needs to happen from it? And then on the assurance side, how would it receive and respond to common service issues? So what are the common problems that could occur? And of course, you start with a small set that a person will have thought of, but then you want to augment it with AI and machine learning so that you think about other cases that will happen, and then you start doing more and more around the loop. When we talk about CLA, closed loop automation, we're not only thinking about problems from an assurance or typically, you will get those problems from an assurance perspective, but that doesn't mean that they were originally a problem from an assurance. So you could have problems on the fulfillment side, order file out. You could have problems around the billing side as well. So one of the use cases that my team is working on is, for example, let's say that in Australia at least, if you're going away for a few months, you can request for your service to be temporarily turned down, and you don't have to pay for those months that you've requested. You said, we're going to be away for 3 months or something like that. So when you're coming back and you receive the bill, and suddenly you were charged, even though you had requested not to have that service happening, then you have to call and you have to complain, and then somebody has to look to see, was there really a call requesting for this, and then they have to debit you or credit for this mishap. So what are the use cases that we're thinking is say, well, if we detect, so if we do a closed loop, when we detect that there's no activity, then it can go back to saying, has there ever been in an open case, it could have been, the log would have taken it. Maybe it could be a trouble ticket or something when you call and request to suspend your service. And then, so when there's no activity, it could go into the log wherever we know that these things are registered, and check that if there has been a request to suspend the service, that this is actually, the billing won't be enabled. So it's all these little things that will, in fact, provide better customer experience and will eliminate manual search and manual issues and manual, finger pointing and things like that. And if we can automate all of these things because we have the technology, it's not about technology, it's all about how you can create these cases, these use cases, such that thing happens in the background. And you make these happen automatically. And these are all sorts of little things that you may not have a thought of, but we can use AI, we can use closed loop for. And it's not just for scaling up or scaling down and things like that. We can look at it across the life cycle of a service. And I think that these are some of the use cases that we have to expand our view from a CLA and zero-touch automation. It's all about automation. To do automation requires a lot of understanding between what you're selling, the product you're selling, the service that is derived from it, and then the resources that are actually associated with it, such that if there is an issue, then you know how they all link together. Today we have, I have about 20, 21, 25 different domains, right? I have a media domain, I have the wireless access domain, I have a fixed access domain, I have lots of different domains, right? And they all have their own ways of doing inventory. They all have their own inventory system. Now, when I'm exposing up into a product, and if my product was a connected workplace which used a CPE, and that CPE is typically connected with a fixed access, then it will have an Ethernet connectivity to multiple sites. Then if the fixed access falls over, it will jump over wireless. And so if you think about it, I have a lot of different domains that are included in here in this overall chain. So when a failure occurs, I need to know how to re-enable all of this, and how each of my domains is going to send me their inventory so that I know that this bit is down and I know what to do with it and how to react to it. I need to have a forum where we could maybe standardize how we expose this type of information. And I'm not sure yet where we need to go and who we can work to, but we've thought about it, and we think that there's probably three different patterns that we could think about how this could get done. Do we want to have a centralized inventory where we receive all of the attributes of all of the distributed inventory? We could sync then how the events are going to be sent and things like that. Or we have an indexed inventory where we only have the instance identifier, so this is in real time. So this is up and running, and then we know how to access the information, and then we know how to synchronize things. Or we go into a federated inventory, where in here we have the instance, but we also have some static attribute data that we know doesn't really change during runtime. And we haven't made up our mind, and maybe different service provider will pick different ways, but we need to have a forum. We need to have a place where we have to know how we could do this across suppliers, across domains, across all of these things to, again, enable more and more automation. And these are the types of requirements. This is why I participate into standards and give these things to the industry overall, because in the end, I mean, we don't have all the answers, and we need the industry overall to help us in figuring things out to enable more and more automation. Arbitration is another case here, where this is going to be really interesting. I have two different domains. Let's think about it. I have, example could be that I've sold a product called sport viewing on my mobile, okay? And it's supposed to be 4K live stream, and this person is moving around, and it's in a different area where I cannot provide you with a 4K streaming purpose. So now the SLO, so the service level objective from the domain of the media says, hey, I need to do 4K. This is what was promised to the customers, 4K. The mobile is saying, can't do 4K because I don't have enough bandwidth. So there has to be an arbitration here that looks at it from an overall and thinks that what's more important? Which of these two domains is more important? And in the case of, we want the customer uninterrupted. So even if we have to go down to 2K streaming, I think they'll still prefer to see 2K than saying, can't do 4K, so sorry, I'm going to drop the call completely. Right? And so there has to be a way for more arbitration-wise function that actually looks at it from a product to then the service, to then the resource, and knows what to do with this in cases where there are different SLOs, service level objectives, from different domains, and take a responsibility of saying which one can drop its SLO, basically, or its SLA. The SLAs is more towards the customer, and we decided that from a product level, that uninterrupted viewing was the better case. And so we have to start thinking about how we are creating all of these use cases, how we are creating arbitration, and which product decides upon which domain and the actions within each of the domains. But again, it all started with an intent. And what are the domains when they expose their service, what each service is capable of, so that we build that into our end-to-end automation in the end. By achieving this is what I was saying, by achieving this earlier today, or this type of network as a service architecture, it used to take us, I think it was 13 to 19 months for creating a product. We believe that our new architecture is going to bring us down to 4 to 6 months. Why? Because if you think about it, today I have a firewall, and it's in my internet security. And within my internet security, I used to have a physical firewall, and now I want to change to a virtual firewall. That means that I have to rebuild a brand new product just to be able to access to that new resource, okay? And what does the customer get in the end? Okay, they get a virtual firewall, but the physical firewall probably was working just as well. So they don't really get that much of a real benefit, if you want. It's more us that will be able to instantiate and things like that. But the fact that I changed, it means that I need to collect the alarms, it means I need to know how to configure this thing, da-da-da. And then let's say today I selected my virtual firewall with one supplier, and in 6 months from now I decide I want to do another supplier. I need to order another. I need to create a brand new product, which is still going to take us at least 13 months to build, because I need to know how I'm going to configure, how I'm going to adapt to those APIs for that new suppliers, how I'm going to collect its alarm, and how I'm going to collect the KPIs, and how I do everything. And I need to do then the integration into my IT system. All my IT system needs to know about each of those resources and how to talk to it and so on. Whereas in the new NaaS way of doing things, I'm advertising firewall as a service, whether it's a physical, whether it's as virtual, whether it's from supplier A, whether it's supplier B, doesn't matter. So basically, we really believe in this architecture, and we believe that standards is the way to go, because all of the service providers around the room can benefit from this.